Before we get started into Jean-Claude Van Johnson, I'd like to remind everybody that you guys can go to saltynerdstore.com. We have all of our t-shirts, stickers. That's just about it. Go there, check out what
we got mugs.
We got mugs. We do have mugs. I'm going to work on making some more of those.
T-shirts.
T-shirts. I said that already. Thank
Baby
you.
bibs.
Do we have hats yet?
We should get bibs. Hats? No,
Hats.
we don't have hats
Let's
yet.
do hats.
Let's do hats.
Okay.
We'll do hats next week. Go to saltynerdstore.com. There you can check out some of our products. You can help support the podcast and get some cool stuff for it. All right. Let's talk about the Amazon Prime original TV show, Jean-Claude Van Johnson.
What the last 2 weeks has been building up to.
This is what it's all
I've been
about,
wanting to
people.
talk about this show for months.
This is what it's all about.
Okay, we got 15 minutes.
During this portion, we can't let Kadish talk at all.
He's still got 2 pages of notes over there.
You get the setup, and then we're going to go around. All right. So, Kadish, why don't you set the table for us? What is Jean-Claude Van Johnson all about?
So it's an Amazon original series, and it's basically this. It's basically this. The setup is that Jean-Claude Van Damme is a secret agent who moonlights as a action star, and he goes around the world shooting these movies. And when he's not shooting movies, he's going on secret missions to help ensure the freedom of the planet.
So his spy name is Jean-Claude Van Johnson, but his movie star name is
Jean-Claude Van Damme,
right.
And his real name is Jean-Claude Van Verenberg.
Yes.
JV or JC.
JCVV. Yeah. So basically, the show kind of centers around Jean-Claude Van Damme coming out of retirement to go back into the spy game in order to win the heart of his long-lost love.
Who's like 30 years younger than he is.
And while he's doing it, we basically get to see all of his best movies crammed into this show as plot points.
Yes.
And it's a very self-aware meta take on everything Jean-Claude Van Damme related. So even if you're just kind of like a casual fan of Van Damme, you'll watch this show and just laugh your butt off.
Yeah.
But if you're like an actual fan of his, like he does a lot of like really self-depreciating like humor in this movie or in this show, and it's absolutely brilliant.
I really wanted to like credit him because he can look at himself like that and make a joke about it and make this TV show that's very like Deadpool level meta. And it's so funny. It like worked so well.
Yeah.
It was perfect for him.
And what's great about this is Kadish and I watched this when it originally came out, like a year ago, 2 years ago?
A little bit longer than I think it was 2017.
Okay. So we watched it then and we thought it was brilliant and hilarious. Well, then we watched it again for the podcast after we had watched Bloodsport and the movies that we talked about last week. And having revisited those movies and then rewatching this and like having all of those tropes fresher in our minds, it was just so much funnier on the second watch.
This movie takes on Bloodsport, Double Impact, Time Cop. Just like all of, like even like Hard Target, there's like a few nods to that in there. Like it just and it kind of pokes fun at celebrity culture and LA culture.
So the one person that I cannot get out of my head is the freaking California like Metro director that's doing this movie.
Yes.
The only time, like I kept watching this movie.
Are we filming?
I kept imagining Kadish having to work with somebody like that or being that person. I'm like, oh my God, no wonder he left Hollywood. It was hilarious. But yeah, I could only help but picture Kadish on set, like working with somebody like that. He's sitting there smoking his giant robot vape pen and just like, blowing smoke in Jean-Claude's face.
And it's funny if you notice, like no one smokes a cigarette in this show. Everyone's vaping.
Yeah.
And there's this great scene in the very first episode where Jean-Claude Van Damme goes to a restaurant, and the restaurant's called Dry, D-R-I. And it's just a restaurant that serves dry ramen noodles.
That's right.
And they give him like this plate of like right out of the package dry ramen square.
And it's got like some accoutrement on top of it.
And he's like, excuse me, but my ramen is dry. And the waiter's like, yeah, that's our thing.
It's a concept, man.
Yeah, it's a concept, man. And he's like, well, can I have some water for my dry ramen? He's like, nah, man.
And he's like, we don't serve water here.
California.
We're a pop-up experience. We're not really a restaurant. and then the guy like actually looks up from his phone and sees him, and he's like, oh, and Jean-Claude's like, yes, I know. And he's like, dude, like, have you been in anything recently? Like anything I've seen on Blu-ray or streaming? And he's like, no, I'm retired. Not Nicolas Cage retired, real retired.
And he's like, oh, I thought you were Nicolas Cage.
like the very beginning of the show, like we see Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's like in his bed at his like multi-million-dollar house, his lair. Everything has his initials on it, JCVD, just like everything. It's just monogrammed with his initials. And this.
Can we talk about the shower?
And this sexy naked girl just comes out and she's like, Jean-Claude, I just got out of your shower and my skin's all sticky. And he's like, yes, that's because it's coconut water. and she's like, your shower has coconut water? And he's like, of course it does. You do this every time you're over here. She's like, this is the first time I've been here. And he's like, of course it is. He's just like so depressed and over it.
He just doesn't care.
And like he gets up out of bed, he puts his feet in the JCVD branded slippers, and he goes downstairs, and everywhere there's like posters of him and his movies.
Time Cop.
And
all of them.
Hard Target. And like he gets on his Segway to go out to his driveway to pick up his newspaper. And he's just like so depressed. Like he just like his life has no meaning anymore. And then like while he's at Dry, he sees this girl, and it was like this former flame of his, and
they were like partners. They were spy partners and lovers.
And he has a flashback of like the last time he remembers being with her.
Training on a sniper range.
Yes, and so like he runs up to her and he's like, hey, I know things ended badly between us, but like I want to say hi to you. And she kind of lets it slip that she's like still in the spy game, and she's got this job in Bulgaria. And she's like, I'm done with you, Jean-Claude. And so after she leaves, he wants to get her back. So he goes to his agent,
who was the mom from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
No, the Cosby Show.
Oh, the Cosby. Oh, that's right. Yeah, Cosby Show. Also the mom from Creed.
And you just showed your age so bad.
So apparently in this universe, the William Morris Agency, which is a really well-known talent agency in Hollywood, is a secret front for a government spy ring who basically sends people, around the world under the guise of making movies in order to, do spy stuff. And he goes to his agent, and at first his agent, who's played by Mama Huxtable, thinks that he's coming back for movies. So she's like pitching him all these like movies, and they're all action reimaginings of like really like.
Did you write down all the ones that she pitched?
Yes.
Oh my God.
and so here's the thing. So she had an action reimagining of Ricky Tikki Tavi.
Oh, I used to love that.
She had an action reimagining of Anne of Green Gables. And an action reimagining of the story of P.F. Chang's, which is like a movie about how like the restaurant came about. So like, and all these movies have Channing Tatum attached to them. and the P.F. Chang movie has Jackie Chan as General So, who rides a giant chicken.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
But so like she's pitching all these movies to Jean-Claude, and she's like, oh, this one's good. It's at Paramount. It has Channing Tatum attached to it. And Jean-Claude's like, I don't think you understood me when I said I was back. Jean-Claude Damme is retired, but Jean-Claude Van Johnson is back. and so like she hits a button on her desk, and
all
like
the windows close.
Yeah, her big office turns
into a fortress.
Yeah, and so like once the office is secure, she starts like talking real with him, and she's like, "Are you sure this isn't because you want to get that girl back?" And he's like, "No, I want to have meaning in my life. I want to do what's right. I want to get back in the game." And so she's like,
also I want her again.
Yeah. And so basically, Jean-Claude Van Damme goes to this movie in Belarus, which is an action reimagining of Huckleberry Finn.
Get hooked.
and the movie's called
Great. I want to see this movie for real.
Yeah,
right?
No kidding. Like this movie looked awesome. Basically, they gender swap Tom Sawyer into a woman, and so Huckleberry Finn.
I love you too, Tom.
Yeah, Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer are now lovers. and they're fighting, like evil in the South with a magic hammer. But like
magic paintbrush.
Yeah, magic paintbrush. And this whole movie, this fake movie within the show, it's called Huck.
Get hucked. I love that trailer that they did. The voiceover guy was freaking hilarious. Get hucked.
Like
it was
I would love to see this movie in real life. I would love to. Like it's so funny because like they have a black actor playing N-word Jim.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm offended by his name. What, Jim? No, the other one.
So then they recast him with a Chinese actor.
Yeah.
And they call him C-word Jim.
Canceled.
Yeah, so canceled.
Yeah. And like for some reason, Jean-Claude Van Damme thinks that the guy who's playing N-word Jim is having an affair with the girl that he likes, and so like he basically gets him fired from the movie.
But then when did you notice? I'm sure you noticed when they play the trailer later.
Yeah.
Like the black guy's in part of the trailer, and then the Chinese guy's in the rest of the trailer.
Yeah, like everything about this movie, like it's very self-aware.
Oh yeah,
but it's amazing. Like for instance,
it's basically a parody.
Oh,
isn't
it's
it?
so great.
It comes really close to being a parody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like in the very first episode, there's a scene where Jean-Claude Van Damme is talking with the douchebag director that you were mentioning, and the director's like Jean-Claude, like this isn't like your time when people were just throwing kicks around and bad guys would attack one at a time. It's just not realistic. And then at the end of the episode, he's fighting all these like guards, security guards at this chemical factory.
Yeah.
And they're about to charge him, and the leader's like stops them all. He's like, wait. Got to go one at a time, otherwise this gets confusing.
You might bump into each other.
Yeah,
or something.
Just
go one at a time.
Just go one at a time. And like that setup alone was just like fantastic. But they also set up the fact that Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's been out of the game for a while, so he's not quite at his peak.
He can't do the split.
So like his quote unquote gift is the ability to do the splits.
Yeah.
And so like at the beginning of the episode, like he tries to do the splits and like he fails, and then like the guy attacks him and just
knocks him in the face with a baton.
Yeah. And then
that looked like a hard hit too.
Yeah.
Like it was not. That didn't seem like a CGI fish. That was like full on to the face. Whack.
Yeah. And then you see like by the end of the movie, like he like does the splits and he's like back and like he punches the guy in the balls, knocks him out.
He does the blood sport move.
His splits save the day.
His splits
Oh my
save the
God.
day.
Okay, I know it's too soon to talk about that finale, but the last episode where he stops the freaking conveyor opening door with his split, and you could hear like ripping tissue and bones, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. So in the climax of the movie, in order to stop the bad guy of the show, in order to stop the bad guy from escaping, like she has this helicopter in an underground bunker, and the tennis court above it is slowly opening to like let the helicopter out. So Jean-Claude Van Damme, in order to stop this, he uses his quote unquote gift, which is the split.
He's like, I must use my gift.
And basically, he hooks his feet behind these like two like extending things from the ground, and he uses his
muscle.
He
just uses his
leg
muscle.
muscles.
His muscle from Brussels.
Yeah, his muscles from Brussels to keep the thing from opening all the way so that he can give his partners time to go down there and stop the bad guy.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there all zenned out.
Yeah.
Like
he's in his pose.
Doing the splits. Yeah.
He's stopping this giant machine from opening. It was gold,
I
dude.
must use my gift.
It was pure gold. I loved it. I love that moment too. And I was like, when the girl was like, Jean-Claude, you need to be the hero. And he's like, no, I am not the hero. You are. And she's like, go do your thing. And he sits there and he's got his little pose with the split. I was like, God, man, it's so funny.
Can we talk about Philippe?
Yes. Oh my God.
Philippe.
Okay, so Philippe is basically Jean-Claude Van Damme's doppelganger. But
Yeah, okay.
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay, so he goes into this factory and he has to go in disguise because people might recognize Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
So he puts on this disguise, and as he's walking in, people are like, hey, Philippe, as he walks by. And turns out he looks in his disguise, he looks exactly like one of the guys that works there, whose name is Philippe.
Who's also a giant Jean-Claude Van Damme fan.
Who's a huge fan of Jean-Claude
this is
Van Damme.
the double impact
Also played
nod.
by Jean-Claude Van Damme.
But both characters are played by Jean-Claude Van Damme.
God, the voice he does.
Oh, it's so great.
It's hilarious.
How I can't even do it.
I can't do it either. I'm not even going to try. Don't try. Please don't try.
Do you like time cop?
Do you like... I can't do it. I can't do it. It's so funny, though.
And it's just like really fucked up because Jean-Claude Van Damme told him that Looper was a better movie than Time Cop. And he's like, but if you're really me from the future, you would know that Time Cop is my favorite movie. And he's just so messed up over it.
And it's funny because so when Jean-Claude Van Damme does run into Philippe, his doppelganger, he says, "Who are you?" And Jean-Claude Van Damme is like, "I am you from the future." And then he puts his hand on Philippe's shoulder and he's like, "Don't worry, everything will be okay." And Philippe is like, "You are
He
not."
calls bullshit on him immediately. He's like matter can't occupy matter, dude.
So he uses the line from Time Cop, the one time travel rule that they had in that movie, and he says, "You are not me from the future because like matter cannot occupy like space." And Jean-Claude Van Damme is just like floored. He's like shit.
He's like, oh well, they can in Looper.
He's like, well. In Looper, Bruce Willis touches Joseph Gordon-Levitt
all the time.
And then Philippe is like,
"Do you really think that Looper is a better movie than Time Cop?" And he's like, "Yes." And he's like, "Then you are not me." Dude, that was such a fantastic.
So great.
So great. The exchange between those two.
And the opening voiceover in the very first episode, it's like Jean-Claude Van Damme is like, "You might recognize me as the star of Time Cop, which is like Looper, only a million times better." It's like, "You might also recognize me from Bloodsport. You've probably seen it because it's played on TV constantly."
Which is so true too.
Yeah.
This show is so great. It has so many great moments, and the storyline itself is actually quite clever. To be honest with you, I was
it really
into
is. Yeah,
it was really good.
Like the bad guy in the show, his name is Dragon Molotov. But they pronounce it Dragon. And he's like this Russian oligarch who basically his lifelong dream was to be a supervillain who could control the weather.
I can understand that.
So he created a drug empire, and like Jean-Claude's whole mission is to find out the source of this.
What is it?
This drug,
HK or
HK,
something? Yeah.
which is a heroin.
Hey, I want to buy drugs.
It's a heroin ketamine mix.
There's an episode that reminds me like so much of Tokyo Drift.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it.
That was on purpose.
Freaking love it.
And so Dragon Molotov, he's also the financier for Jean-Claude Van Damme's movie.
Yeah.
And
that's right. Yeah.
And his whole thing is about like he's building this. He created a drug cartel so he could fund his lifelong dream of creating a weather machine, a machine that could control the weather in his underground lair. And so like Jean-Claude Van Damme's been like slowly kind of dismantling his drug network. And Molotov loves it because he's like, "Yes, I always wanted a secret agent to try to come and stop me."
Dude, the first time he meets Jean-Claude, he's like, "It's Jean-Claude Van Damme!" He's so excited to see him.
And he's always hanging out with that douchey director. He's just like, the director's always like, "Hey, me and Dragon are going to go off and get some dinner. You want to come?" Yeah.
We're gonna do an 8-ball, Yin.
Yeah, that's right.
but like there's so much great stuff in it. Like there was a scene in, I believe it was episode 3, where these thugs come to like kill Jean-Claude, or they're coming to get a microchip back from Jean-Claude.
A microchip that's like
It's huge.
giant.
1988
Yeah,
processor.
it's like bigger
Yeah.
than my cell
And she
phone.
was
It's like the size of my iPad.
She was so mad at him. Like that can't be what it is. That microchips are tiny. What are you doing? This isn't the 80s anymore, Jean-Claude. She's so mad at it. Actually, at the end of the episode, turns out to
It's
be
like
exactly.
key, yeah.
and basically these Russian thugs kidnap Philippe, who survived all of his friends getting murdered at the factory. Because after Jean-Claude beats up all the security guys, he blows up the factory and kills everyone. But Philippe survives with a sprained neck. So but he's all sad because all of his friends are dead, and he finds out that his idol Jean-Claude Van Damme is actually a bad guy. And so like the Russians recruit Philippe to help them infiltrate the movie set.
They give him a haircut.
Yeah, so they give him a haircut.
He looks
he looks just like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
except he talks like a freaking Smeagol.
And so like
You killed all my friends. And you sprained my neck. And you said Looper was a better movie.
Stop, I can't.
And so like there's a scene where Jean-Claude Van Damme is fighting these Russian thugs, and they infiltrated the set by getting into costume. as like
Oh,
Confederate soldiers, and so Jean-Claude Van Damme is in his Huckleberry Finn outfit.
He's in overalls with one strap.
Yeah, with one
Yeah.
strap.
And he looks pretty good for his age, though. Too.
And they have this ferry boat set, and Jean-Claude Van Damme starts fighting these like thugs who are legit trying to kill him.
Yeah, for real. Like he's actually beating the shit out of these
and
guys.
everyone thinks it's part of the movie.
And the director's like,
director's
are we
losing his
filming? Are we
mind.
filming?
Film this. Get this
Fucking
on
John, why the fuck are we filming? People are getting shot for real. One dude gets
People
like,
are legit dying. Like one guy gets impaled, and he's like, "Oh my god, the effects! That was amazing."
yeah. The director's like, cut print, and like his script supervisor's like, I think people are really dead. No one pays attention
it's
to her.
like this scene isn't in the script. He's like, I don't care.
Jean-Claude himself gets rid of all the bodies, like puts them on a golf cart, and like, drives them away. You gotta watch this show.
And Jean-Claude has a sidekick whose name is Louis, and Louis
is such a badass.
Louis was a child who was raised by the cartel,
Yes.
by the drug cartel,
Yes.
and he did so many terrible things in his youth that he can literally look people in the eye and they can see all the terrible things he did and be traumatized from it.
Yeah. He like can literally render people insane by just gazing into their eyes.
There was this one scene where they were trying to get past a bouncer to go into a party, and he's like, I got this, don't worry about it. And he's like, you're going to let us in. And he's just staring at the dude, and the bouncer finally goes, oh my God, fine. You know, he covers his eyes and runs away.
Yeah, like he actually sees
glimpses of the guy's history,
of how terrible this guy has been, and he just can't handle it.
I need to note something real quick because I think it's awesome. There are literally tears rolling down Alex's face right now.
I'm going to use your dog as a napkin.
Well, the funny thing about Louis is that he's the character Rico Suave from Hannah Montana. He was the child actor.
Oh, speaking of like cameos of people that we see in other stuff, if you guys remember in The Mandalorian, that very opening scene of the first episode where they walk into the bar and the dude's got the big old beer and he's talking like Huttese, that's the same dude who fights him in the scenes in Huck where he accidentally punches him in the face. And he's like, oh my gosh, Jean-Claude, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I thought you were going to duck. And it was like just a ploy to get Jean-Claude off the set. But I just thought it was really cool. You get to see kind of like these reoccurring people in these doing stunt work.
The Tokyo Drift episode where Jean-Claude has to go undercover in this underground race ring.
What is the chef guy with the blonde goatee? What's that guy's name?
Oh, you would know.
He looks just like him.
What?
The guy.
The celebrity chef with the blonde Bobby.
No, it was Guy Fieri.
Guy
Yes.
Fieri. He looks just like Guy Fieri
He
in
does.
this episode.
He does. He puts on like this crazy
Bleached blonde
blonde
goatee.
wig and goatee.
And
Yes.
they could only find this like crappy Honda to race in.
It's like all rusted out.
He's like, why didn't you tell me you didn't know how to drive a stick? He's sitting there still like trying to park it. And it's all freaking out.
and Lewis is trying to coach him through this. He's like, okay, now we have to play this cool. We can't call attention to ourselves. And then he just walks up to the main guy,
Big boss,
and says,
Hey, I want to buy drugs.
and everyone just all the music stops. They all just look at him, and he's like, how much do you want?
Vader, you haven't said anything yet.
I don't. I'm good. You guys do it. Yeah.
All right. Well, at least you're smiling, so at least you're having fun.
I'm getting a laugh in once in a while.
And the great thing about this episode is that, so like, do you remember in Bloodsport where basically, the whole climax is like he's blind,
Yes.
but like he trained.
The climax of this episode is that he goes blind for the race.
Yeah, he basically he ties a blindfold around his eyes.
And then the drug cartel guy is like, oh, this guy's crazy. I'm going to do it too. And he puts a blindfold over himself. And as soon as he starts driving, he kills himself.
He crashes and dies.
His car bursts into
And then the race is completely over
but Jean-Claude doesn't know that.
because he's blindfolded.
Yeah, so like he actually
He keeps driving, but he's driving like 10 miles an hour.
No, he's driving perfect.
Yeah, he's doing it. He's like at the beginning of the race, guy's like, this is a drifting race. And Jean-Claude's like, what's drifting? And then he puts the blindfold on and he's drifting around these corners and like these loop-de-loops, like super perfect.
It's so
And the
graceful.
dude's in the background, the dude's car is on fire. And he's,
And like everyone takes off.
dude, this is my favorite episode of this whole freaking show.
And it also has the best song in the
Oh
entire
my God.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Suck my dick. Suck my motherfucking dick.
Oh, I love episode.
But okay, so like in addition to how good this episode is, there was an episode a little bit. I think it was episode 4, if I'm not mistaken. And this is an episode where basically the girl that Jean-Claude loves gets killed, and so he goes back in time to save her. He time cops her. So like he goes back in time, he knocks himself out and puts himself in the trunk of his car. And then he infiltrates the party that Dragon Maltov is throwing for the premiere of Huck. And so like at this point, Dragon has kidnapped Louis and has him in his underground bunker on this booby trap that's set to blow up if any weight changes.
Yes. Then they Indiana Jones this one.
Yeah, it's a scale with claymores on all 4 corners, and if the weight changes at all, it blows up. Yeah. It's very much Indiana Jones moment. Yeah.
So the Jean-Claude from the future switches places with Louis in order to save his life.
Oh, I had completely forgotten about that part.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
No, it was great.
And then the actual Jean-Claude from our time comes back, and he's like. And that's how we get the explanation that he's being time copped because of time travel. So like there's actual time travel in the show.
Yeah.
But then Philippe shows up and he's drunk.
You killed all my friends.
And then like Philippe steals the time machine from the future Jean-Claude and travels back in time, and the future Jean-Claude blows up.
Yeah.
And
they throw him a gun, because he's going to shoot somebody, but then the gun sets the weight off on the scale, and it blows him up. And then the Jean-Claude that's on the
present day Jean-Claude,
the present day Jean-Claude is like, so
that was Philippe,
that
right?
was Philippe, right? And everybody's like, I guess so.
And then like after all that goes down, Dragon comes back down into his lair. And he starts doing the villainous monologue thing where he's like, ever since I was a little boy, I've wanted to control the weather. He's like, he's like, I see you found my secret weather controlling machine. And so like, he has this thing where he's like, I've always wanted this secret agent adversary, and all of a sudden, the guy from Double Impact is now my nemesis. And then he introduces his sidekick.
What was his name?
So okay. So get this. So he's like, allow me to introduce my henchman, Mini Mano, which
literally translates means
no. Basically, he says like in Belarusian that translates to big man with fist who likes to smash things. And he's like, but I like to keep it simple, so we will just call him Marble Hands. So this huge guy comes out. He's got like these big stone fists, and Jean-Claude Van Damme has to start fighting him. And so like he's running around, and Marble Fist is basically just like
knocking him around,
breaking shit left and right with his like undefeatable marble,
like literal
fist.
like Hulk smash hands, but they're made of marble.
Yeah. And so like eventually Jean-Claude Van Damme does the splits and like hits him in the balls, and he just like keeps hitting him in the balls, and finally
like a speed bag.
Yeah. And finally Mini Mano just kind of like falls to his knees, and he's like dazed, and his fists are like up in the air, and Jean-Claude gets up and he starts like
meditating,
like he's got his hands out, and he's got this really intense look on his face, and everyone just stops, and they're like, oh, the dim muck, the touch of death from Bloodsport. And so Jean-Claude's like, he like hits the hands, and the marble hands explode. and Mini Mano's just like, no, he like falls over.
My favorite part about that scene is right after that, the bad guy, Dragon Molotov or whatever his name is, starts running away, and Jean-Claude spin kicks a piece of marble that's shaped like a thumb and kicks it into the back of his head.
And into his skull.
Yeah, falls over dead.
Whacked him.
God, this freaking show is amazing.
Yeah.
But he wasn't even the real bad guy.
No, it was like the agency that he worked for.
Yeah, so the William Morris agency is actually the secret bad guy.
Huxtable.
Claire Huxtable was the actual bad guy. She basically, the William Morris agency is actually a front for a criminal organization run by Morris.
The architect.
The architect who Jean-Claude Van Damme thought was just a myth. Like, William was apparently a real guy.
The guy from West Wing and Jurassic Park 2, Lost World.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Carr, he's like a lawyer, and he plays in a bunch of stuff. He's all over the place.
Yeah. But Jean-Claude Van Damme discovers that he's been used all of his career to actually do crimes as opposed to like saving the world. So
like,
he
I want to
feels
be
betrayed.
the hero. And he's like, son, there's no heroes. It was, it's such
Nobody's a hero.
nobody's a hero. And he starts laughing, like blowing him off like he's nothing.
Yeah. So after he kills Morris,
Spoiler alert.
he kills Morris, and now Claire Huxtable knows that he's onto them. And so he's like,
Claire Huxtable.
I'm gonna look up her name.
Felicia Rashad.
No, but I meant her character.
he's like, I have to go where no one will ever find me. And so he goes to a Blockbuster video.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. they have a training montage.
Yeah,
Jane.
Jane. They have a training montage inside of a Blockbuster. And all the movies are on this. And the younger girl walks in. She's like, what did she say? She says something like, I didn't know there was any of these left. She starts taking VHS tapes off the thing and like blowing the dust off of them.
And like he's like showering in bottles of coconut water.
Yeah, he just buys all these coconut waters and just like pours them over himself to clean himself.
Pay up and set up.
And he's also got this weird diet where he eats nothing but Pop-Tarts and toaster pastries.
There was another scene. He's in hideout. There's another like subplot about him being an orphan, basically.
Yeah, he goes to France.
Yeah, he goes to France,
goes to Brussels.
Disappears, and he's like in this old orphanage that's abandoned, and he's got a 55-gallon drum that's on fire, and he like this. It's filmed almost like an action scene where he like takes out this hanger, and he starts bending it, and he's like doing it all aggressively, and then it turns out that he's just using it to hold his toaster strudel
over the open flame. And he can't even toast a toaster strudel properly. Like it catches on fire. And he freaks out,
whacking it. He kicks it across the ground.
And I think you guys like this show way more than I do.
Dude, this show is so freaking
It's
funny.
so funny.
Yeah, it is good.
But
Do you have any favorite moments? You want to chime in?
I think you've covered them.
He cooks his Pop-Tarts in the microwave.
Yeah,
it's like really weird.
It's psychopathic.
Oh man!
And you're constantly like whenever like he's cleaning the statue of himself in Brussels.
Oh, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah, and like you're constantly reminded of how
washing his balls,
how unimportant he actually is.
Yeah.
And these two girls come up and they're like, "Hey, would you mind?" And they have like their camera phone with them. He's like, "Oh yeah, sure." And so like he tries to take a picture with them. And they're like, "What are you doing?"
Like, no,
They're like, oh no, we wanted you to take a picture of just us.
just us.
Yeah.
in front of that building over there.
Yeah.
So he tries to take a picture of them in front of his statue of him doing the splits. And they're like, "Actually, we want the Ministry of Agriculture behind us." And he's like,
Is that a real statue?
"Yeah."
Yes.
It is? They have a statue of Jean-Claude Van Damme doing a split.
Don't you want to go now?
I do. I did not know that was real. I thought
I didn't know that was
Should
real.
we take a class trip?
Please.
A pod
Maybe if we
trip?
get enough patrons, we'll take a trip to France and take a picture in front of Jean-Claude Van Damme's statue.
Let's have a raffle and we'll take a patron with us if we get enough money.
So they hide out at this abandoned Blockbuster video, and they have a training montage where Jean-Claude Van Damme teaches his girlfriend how to fight, basically. Yeah. Because she's been traumatized because she actually killed a guy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She got her first
got her
kill.
first
and she's
kill.
been like PTSD or something, and she can't fight anymore.
Yeah. And so like they're preparing for the final showdown with Jane, Claire Huxtable. And so basically the final episode of this series is Jean-Claude Van Damme goes and has a confrontation with Jane, and they take on all of her private security, and she tries to escape. And that's when he uses his gift to keep her from escaping. And while he's using his gift, his girlfriend goes down to confront her, and she has to fight the other female agent who was playing Tom Sawyer.
She was playing Tom Sawyer
in the movie, Huck. And
everyone's a secret spy.
and also Lewis just like murders everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like he goes full cartel.
Yeah, he shaves his head. He's got like snake tattoos.
Yeah. Yeah. So on set, Lewis was the hairstylist for Van Damme.
Yeah. And makeup artist too, right?
Yes. And he's been wearing makeup this whole time, which you don't realize until the final
And he
episode.
wipes his face off, and he's got the
He's
snake
got this giant face snake tattoo.
all across. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
It's badass.
And he goes full ham on these guards at Claire Huxtable's like fortress or whatever, and he just wipes out like the entire like. There's a kind of a setup where she kind of like jokes off Jean-Claude, like, you're only one person. I have a whole army after me. And he's like, Or do you? And you
like
see
everyone's
everybody's dead. There's a guy up against the window and he's got blood hanging out. It's just
like the whole storyline for this show is basically every Jean-Claude Van Damme movie you've ever seen mixed up into one movie.
Yes.
You know, and it's not a long series either. It's like 6 episodes
That's
long.
not, yeah, no, it's not very long at
I'm
all.
so disappointed that it got canceled after one season because
so
it's
good.
so good.
Especially because like at the end, like they ended on a cliffhanger
Yeah.
where Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's in a wheelchair now, but he's bought the orphanage that he grew up in and he reopened it for, for other orphans now. It's called the Jean-Claude Van Varenberg Memorial Orphanage.
And they're like, memorial means like for somebody's death, right? And he's like, he is dead.
No, it was the Jean-Claude Van Damme Memorial.
Jean-Claude Van Damme
and he's
Memorial.
like, Jean-Claude Van Damme is dead. And then, after this happy kind of ending, all of a sudden everyone freezes and he's like, what's going on? And then like the same characters that he's with show up.
Oh my God.
From a time vortex, and they're like, we need your help for the Time Wars. And Jean-Claude Van Damme just looks at the camera, and then it cuts to black.
Dude, I want to watch that movie.
I'm like, I want to see season 2 where the Time Wars break out.
They come out, they have like holographic guns and they're all like robotic. They got like Borg parts. Dude, it was amazing.
It was like the perfect way to end that season.
Absolutely.
And I'm very sad that we're never going to get to see what
I
happens next.
know.
Are we never going to get to see it?
No, it got canceled.
Oh, well, we need to
No
make that
season
come
2.
back.
We
Yeah.
do need to make that come back.
Yeah.
That's a hashtag.
We're gonna put up a petition on our Twitter account.
Absolutely.
And you need to
Make
get
Jean-Claude-
on board.
Make Jean-Claude Van Johnson back, come back.
You know what's
I don't
terrible
we'll figure it out.
is like Amazon has this really bad habit of taking these like brilliant shows that they make and just canceling them. Like
Yeah.
the same thing that happened with The Tick. The Tick was great.
Oh, the Tick. I loved the
Yeah.
Tick.
So like I would have loved to have seen them do more Jean-Claude Van Johnson, because it was a half-hour show. Like
Yeah.
how much could it have cost? Yeah,
there wasn't really much to it. And you just got Jean-Claude and a couple other actors and
Yeah.
stuff.
I just don't think that it was as popular.
It should be.
Yeah.
Because it was freaking hilarious.
Yeah. It's a slow burn.
It's a generational thing, though, I think, too.
Also, like it's so much better if you're a fan of Jean-Claude.
Yeah.
Like if you're familiar with his movies and you kind of like get the joke.
Like, I didn't even know the show existed until you guys pointed it out to me. And I was like, oh, I didn't know he made a show on Amazon Prime. That's awesome.
yeah, I
Check
don't
it
think
out.
they marketed it at all.
Yeah, I never heard of it. And then you said it right off the bat. Is like, watching it the first time, it's a good show and it's fun. But if you go back and watch all of his movies and then watch this show, it's like 10 times better.
So much better.
So much better. And I'm like, that's so true. So you're right. Like, super fans of Jean-Claude would love this show. But like the average person who might not be like into it, they probably wouldn't even.
Any
think
super
twice.
fans probably already seen it.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's very inside jokey too.
Yeah.
Like if you're just a casual, don't know much about Jean-Claude Van Damme, and you're looking at a show to watch, it's not a very good show. Like
How dare you?
By and large, it's just not. But like, it's funny if you are in on the joke.
Yeah.
And like because when Jude and I first watched it, like we were just kind of like casually going along. We're like, the show's enjoyable. It's not great, but like it's enjoyable. But then on rewatching it after we revisited a lot of his movies, we were like, the show's brilliant.
Yeah, now we can have a recording of us laughing for 2 hours talking about this movie.
Yeah.
Or this TV show. It's brilliant. It
And
really is.
I disagree. I don't think that it's not a good show. It's not.
Because I thought it was really clever.
Yeah,
like,
it's
even
a clever
just
show,
on its own.
and I think even if you're not familiar with the history of Jean-Claude Van Damme, I think it's still funny. However, if you are really familiar with his work, it's brilliant and hilarious.
super meta.
Alex, what did you think of the Jurassic Universe nod in the show?
Oh, they did. They was like they were casting somebody.
No, so like after the Huck movie,
Yes, I remember that.
tanks because Dragon Molotov dies and he was their financer, so the movie falls through. The director is on the set and he's like drunk and like all depressed because this is like his big movie. And
He's like, I'm finished.
yeah, and Jane shows up and she's
Claire
like,
Huxtable.
yeah, Claire Huxtable, and she's like, I'll make you a deal. She's like, I'll give you the Jurassic Universe franchise. And he's like, Jurassic Universe? And she's like, yes, dinosaurs in space.
That's right. I forgot about that until now. That's right. Yeah.
And
That's awesome. Hey,
and,
that
and
fits
apparently Channing Tatum's attached.
that fits perfect into the Jurassic Junior.
And she's like, I will give you Jurassic Universe as long as you swear never to talk about this movie ever again.
Never mentioned this show.
Yeah,
again.
never mention this movie again.
That's great. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give this show, Matthew Kadish?
Oh, I got to give it a 10.
Yeah.
The show, it was kind of interesting the way it came about, because what Amazon used to do with its original series is they would have what they call pilot season. And basically they commissioned a bunch of pilots for shows that they were thinking about doing. And they would put all the pilots out there, and then you could watch the pilots and then vote on which pilots you wanted to see go to series. And so they would basically do their series order based off of like the feedback they got from their Prime users. Mm-hmm. And the year that this show had its pilot come out, I can remember watching this along with The Tick and a couple others, and then going on Amazon's website and filling out the survey to let them know, like, I wanted more Jean-Claude Van Johnson, stuff like that. But after it got the series order, it took like another year before like the actual series came out. So I think the pilot was 2016, but then the show itself came out in 2017 or something like that. So there was like a long period between the point where Jude and I watched the pilot episode and then when we watched the actual series. And I think that might have hurt it a little bit.
Yeah. That's a bummer, man.
It'd probably be different. Like if this were like a Netflix show where they just dropped the entire thing like at once and did like the hype for it, it probably would have done better. But it's a shame because it's a hidden gem on Amazon.
Yeah, and I remember when we watched the pilot for it and it was just one episode, we were like, I don't know about this. This is going to be terrible. And like we were like, this is good. This is clever. This is funny. And we were both like, oh God, I hope they make it into a series. And then when they did, we were so jacked about it.
That's awesome.
If you're a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme or you're a fan of 80s action movies, like this is definitely a show worth watching.
Absolutely.
And it's free with Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Absolutely. Jude, what do you give this scale of 1 to 10?
I give it an 8.
Ooh. I was expecting a 10.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you.
You did disappoint me. Vader, you haven't said shit this entire time.
I haven't been able to get a word in edgewise. It's all good. I'd give it a 7.
7?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
What was your favorite part of the series?
I don't know. It was just
all around.
all over. It was good. Yeah. 7's a good score.
Okay.
Yeah, 8's a good score too.
Okay. Me and Kadish were like 10. 100%.